check out these spicy patch notes.
Basically, we talked about No Rest for the Wicked, and essentially the dev is saying that it really is defending kind of the early access because again, it's getting some hate. We talked about it. We talked about the early access and why it's getting some hate, and all of those types of things. And essentially, the dev is kind of saying like, look, we're not even a week into early access, and he's saying like it's already pretty clear that going with early access is one of the best decisions we've made. And kind of saying like, I think as games become more and more complex and sophisticated, we'll see some form of early access happening more and more often. Speaking from our own experience, there is no way we could have ever shipped Wicked 1.0 without being able to see all the data, and we're seeing now and getting all of the feedback from its users, and I mean actual users, not a focus testing group. So and then he basically said that Dark Souls would have benefited from early access. Could you imagine?
That's
From
where
Software
that's where that gets me. Yeah, that statement to me is wild, man.
Yeah,
he said
a world-renowned developer. Like I don't know.
He said his exact words are: "Imagine Dark Souls 1, we would have been in early access instead of from rushing to ship a boxed product in a somewhat unfinished state. They probably would have been able to look at the second half of the game and still fully form and polish the less polished areas like Lost Izalith, etc." I don't know.
This is Bill territory, right?
I mean, Lost Izalith was shit, and there's definitely issues with Dark Souls 1, but I don't know.
But do you think
were they vast enough for early access to have helped? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It was also so long ago. Early access wasn't even like really that prevalent.
I have two thoughts about this. I do think that early access can help game development because a larger test group is always good.
Yeah.
It's weird with single player games, but it can still benefit that regard.
We've been seeing a bit
it
more
also
and
helps
more with single player
more
games
independent developers because they can get that payment up front with the game and continue like the development process with the game with that enhanced budget.
Yeah,
I don't really like this guy's vibe of throwing other games under the bus with his like you can defend your early access choice all day without throwing other titles under the bus.
Maybe he saw
Especially
Stellar
when
Blades
your game's being compared to Dark Souls, so it's a weird flex.
Saw Stellar Blades dev and was like, "Oh man, I could do the same thing," except he went the opposite way. With these, like, I'm not going to commend Nier Automata. I'm going to fucking shit on Dark Souls.
My only problem
what he was going for here, dude. Like, because this, like, the Dark Souls community is so
protective.
No, I wouldn't even say they're just compassionate. They have passion for their game. Even if Dark Souls 1 was a little like, not great or whatever. I can't imagine he wants to piss off the Dark Souls community, especially when your game is so heavily like, it's being viewed as a Dark Souls isometric. You don't want to piss off the community that everyone is seeing your game with,
Yeah. My only concern with early access and stuff is and we're seeing it less and less because they're kind of getting ousted from the industry, is games that like perpetually stay in early access.
That's what I was going to say.
Obviously, this is not the case of that. So
my biggest problem is like the games that just continuously stay in early access. One of the biggest ones, DayZ, but one of the biggest ones that came out recently is 7 Days to Die. Yeah, they're literally going into 1.0, and they've been in early access for like 8 years.
They've been in early access, I think, longer than DayZ standalone, and that was a long runner too.
So that's my biggest problem. Is like, yes, I do agree that like, yes, some games could benefit from early access, but like, I almost feel like early access is a little bit of a crutch in some instances. Like, just get the fucking game done. If like,
it's so
weird. Take the time that you need to develop the game, and then release it when it's done.
It's so
that's
weird.
That's the biggest thing that I have
in the case of like 7 Days to Die is like that game could have been 1.0 like 5 updates, 6 updates ago. It's like
it could have.
The game, there's really no reason for them to not.
There's a point. There's a point in a game's development cycle.
Or are they scared to go out of it? It's like, what is your like point here?
So for reference,
there's a point in a game's sorry. There's a point in the game's life cycle where at some point you have to fucking pull the trigger. You have to release it. It's done. It's done enough to be released, right? Like that's, I don't know. I have issues with early access.
Like early access is supposed to be to collect money to fund the game.
Further fund the game. Yeah.
And
I for the most part have no issues with early access in the majority of cases.
Yeah. But I don't know.
Mostly indie. Like I can get down with like supporting indie to early access.
100% indie.
Yeah.
That's where it really should lie. Like
indie and AA studios. Like I think.
Yeah, and quadruple A and quintuple.
Sextuple. For reference, to answer, to give a little bit of a understanding, 7 Days to Die, 10 years. 10 years early access.
Yep. Yeah.
Only beat by one other game, Project Zomboid, 10 years, 3 months.
I didn't realize that game was has been out that long. Wow, that's,
yep.
Fuck, that's old.
But wait. But one thing with Project Zomboid, at least they have and I'm not trying to say this is a cop out, but they have a reason for being in that early access for so long.
They went through a total rehaul.
Yeah, in the middle of their development, they completely rehauled the entire game. They completely redid the systems.
Not even the middle. That was like 3 years ago. That was like
it was relatively recently, but it was a complete rehaul. So like that's. I can kind of give them a little bit of a shove or a pass, but like
just a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, for me, early access, I've always felt early access is weird on single player. Like even when like Hades did early access, weird. Dead Cells doing early access, though it's one I love it. Like still weird. And now we're seeing early access for like Hades doing like Hades 2 is doing a early access technical trial. Like it's weird. It's like
demo, wasn't it?
Like, it's like something extra on top of like, oh, you can do like, and I don't want to just. I know that Hades 2 did a technical trial, and I don't know if they charge for it or what, but there are games out there that are now saying like, hey, you can pay to get into the technical trial, and then early access when it comes out, which is like, oh, so now we're going even farther of saying money up front. It's a weird space. I mean, I like early access games, but I don't.
Well, it's just, again, like we said, it just depends on the game and the company.
Well, yeah, there's some chat there's some conversation going on in the chat with like it's being used now as like a paid playtest or like a paid play tester role. Essentially, you're paying them to basically fix their or at least test their game out and tell them what they need to do. And I don't think that I've never been okay with that. I want to go back to the days when we had a game that released, and granted, it might have been broken, but it was done.
Yeah,
right. I mean, you bought what you got.
The scary thing about this is that we haven't hit, because you think about this. We saw the wave with Kickstarter, right? Kickstarter, we had the wave where you get access to the stuff early, and Kickstarter.
I think Kickstarter was even riskier than early access, though.
Right, but it didn't start like that.
You're buying into a thought.
It was but it was very altruistic at the beginning. It was very like
it was
altruistic. It was, hey, you're gonna buy this. You're kickstarting it. Once we get once it gets funded, like, cool, I'm gonna get XYZ, and that was the thought. But then it became a scummy, shitty platform, and I'm just waiting for the rug pulls to start happening on early access. And we've seen little bits of them, but we've also seen where
they haven't like come out. Are we talking about the day before? Or
no,
what else has there been that I can't think of?
There have been games that have gone into early access, you've charged for them, like they've charged for early access, and then they never came out. Day before never charged.
They never charged though. That's the thing.
Day before never charged.
Illyria was a big one. There was a couple of zombie survivals for the
what was the Wars? Not Wars. Was it War Z? What the fuck was that?
War Z and Survivor Stories. There were so many of those.
Infection.
Nikia or
anyways.
But yeah,
whatever his name was.
So I'm just waiting for that to start happening, where it's like, hey, you're getting rug pulled left and right.
I could totally see that happening in the foreseeable future, dude. I mean, the only thing I will say, at least right now, that's good with early access is like you still have that option to refund the game as long as you don't surpass the refund.
They've limits. Also Steam just changed their refund policies to benefit, I think, more of the
for the early access side of things.
Yeah.
So that's actually that was actually one thing that I did want to talk about. A lot of people were stating that like they changed the fact that you can't refund things that you've put a lot of time into in early access. That's not the case. It's like the games that release and give you like a couple of days worth of head start. That's what they've changed.
Right.
It's not like early access title. Like they're not stating that like if you went and bought 7 Days to Die and put 700 hours into it before it even releases, you can no longer refund it. They're stating that like if 7 Days to Die were to do that and then on top of that charge like a 2-day head start for everybody, right? If you put 70 hours into that 2-day head start, at that point you wouldn't be able to refund it.
I thought part of that too. I thought part of that too was also leaked or rumored that that this is their next step into also making it so that early access games have a longer window for refunds. Obviously, it's not going to be 500, 600 hours. But they do have a larger window than just a 2-hour time frame.
That would be nice.
And they already have a larger window. Yeah, the early access titles already have a larger window. You can refund them no matter how much time you've put into it up until the point that they release, essentially, as far as I know.
Well, but then what about games like 7 Days to Die?
I don't know if that's true. I tried refunding some stuff that was that, and I didn't get the refund.
Pretty sure
I would like
that's
to see the actual notes on that, like how, because I gotta imagine like there's got to be a cutoff somewhere in that early access day. If you buy early access game, put like say even 50 hours into it, I can't imagine they're gonna be like, yeah, you get a refund. You obviously didn't like this game. You just spent a casual 50 hours.
Well, I thought like the person that played Fallout 76 and hated it. He only put 35 hours into it, and then said it was not fun.
Oh yeah, right.
The comments. So
I could be wrong on that. As far as I
would like to see more about that.
As far as I was aware, and I've refunded a couple of games that I put like 20, 30 hours into that have been early access and gotten a full refund for it.
That's just shocking. I wonder if it's dependent on the actual developer allowing it or not.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's still so I'm reading the guidelines now. It is still a 2-hour it's still 2 hours.
Yeah, the guideline hasn't changed.
Yeah.
It's just they're now making that part of the early access trial.
Right here. So when you purchase a title on Steam prior to release date, the 2-hour playtime limit for refunds will apply, except for beta testing, which is what most early access.
Is that classified as early access though?
But the 14-day period for refunds will not start until the release of the release date. For example, if you purchase a game that is in early access or advanced access, which advanced access is the access that you get for like 2 days early head start, right? That's it. That's what they call it. Any playtime will count against the 2-hour refund limit. So that's what they've changed. Okay, I was incorrect about that. So if you pre-purchase a title which is not playable prior to the release date, you can request a refund at any time prior to release date, the release of that title, and the standard 14-day 2-hour refund period will apply starting on the game's release date.
Hey, you made it to the end, and just for that, here's a special invitation to come watch us live every Thursday night at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. But if you miss us, that's okay too. You can find us on any podcast platform at your convenience, or at anchor.fm/prepatch podcast. We hope to see you there.